Hi friends, welcome to my channel. Now I'll tell you about the Etruscans. These ancient people are very interesting historical mystery. In a short period of time, during the first millennium BC, they created the greatest civilization in central Italy. However, this civilization only existed for a few centuries and quickly disappeared, leaving almost no trace. In this video, I'll explain how and why it happened. The greatest mystery of the Etruscans is their origin. The thing is that the Etruscans used a written system based on the Western Greek alphabet. We have about 12,000 different inscriptions from them. These inscriptions are easy to read because they are written in a familiar alphabet. However, linguists can't understand their contents, except for some words. The Etruscan language, in which these inscriptions are made, is unlike any language known to us. Therefore, modern science can't determine the origin of the Etruscans. It's clear that the Etruscan language wasn't Indo-European, and was very different from the language of the neighboring cultures, such as Greek, Latin, and Celtic. Today, there are various theories about the mysterious origin of the Etruscan people. Surviving ancient texts suggest that only a few ancient Greek historians had something to say on the matter. By and large, two opposing theories can be drawn from the Greek texts. Herodotus proposed that the Etruscans were once of the same people as the Lydians of Asia Minor. According to him, during the late Bronze Age, when the Lydian cities were plagued by famine, they decided to send away part of the population. Those who were chosen to leave sailed off the Anatolian coast and established themselves in the Italian peninsula. Dionysius of Halicarnassus expressed the second theory. He firmly believed that the Etruscans were native to central Italy. According to him, their language, customs, and governmental institutions didn't resemble those of the Lydians or any other people of Anatolia. Aside from the ancient literary sources, there has been archaeological and genetic research of the Etruscan origins. A general conclusion that is drawn from this research must favors the theory of Dionysius, as it's more probable that the Etruscans were indeed an indigenous people, at least as far back as the Neolithic period. But most likely, both ancient historians are correct. The Etruscans were both. They were an indigenous people of Italy, and the descendants of settlers from Anatolia. The thing is that they were the descendants of those Anatolian tribes who settled in Italy during the Neolithic Revolution back in the 6th millennium BC. This is all that can be said about the origin of the Etruscans. We have an idea of the appearance of the Etruscans from the images we have from their tombs. They were short, strong, dark, and had large heads, which may indicate their Anatolian origin. Both men and women had long hair. Their clothes looked Greek, and all of them, both men and women, were very fond of jewelry. The Etruscan religion was one of the most important and interesting aspects of the Etruscan culture. Initially, the Etruscan deities were worshipped as shapeless spirits with elements of nature attributed to each one. Later, the Etruscans were highly influenced by the cultures of the East, with Greek mythology playing a big role of the reshaping of the Etruscan religion. From then on, the Etruscan deities were depicted in human form, just like the Greek gods. The Etruscan pantheon was comprised of many deities. Its chief god was Tinia, who commanded the skies and used lightning bolts as a weapon similar to Zeus. Other deities of the Etruscan religion include Uni, a wife of Tinia, who was the queen of the gods, Thalna, the god of trade, and Usil, the god of the sun. The Etruscans were famous for their preoccupation with fate and destiny, and their religion was very well organized. Under Greek influence, the Etruscans began to build large temples. These resembled their contemporary Greek structures, but they had unique characteristics, as they were mostly made of mud brick, had columns of the Tuscan order, and the sculpture of the temple's deity was usually placed on top of the building instead of inside. Now, I'll briefly review the stages of development of the Etruscan civilization. The earliest form of the Etruscan civilization is known as the Villanovan culture, which developed around the late 10th century BC, making it the earliest Iron Age culture in the Italian peninsula. The Villanovan period was one of many changes. The people largely abandoned the numerous Bronze Age villages and gathered in a few large settlements that were strategically located and easily defensible. They also started a large-scale exploitation of the land's resources. Etruria was already a fertile land, but iron tools and new farming techniques resulted in a massive agricultural growth. Additionally, mineral resources such as iron, gold, copper, and tin were extracted on a large scale. Not much is known today about the Villanovan people. According to archaeological findings, they lived in mud brick huts with thatched roofs. These were mostly circular, but could have other shapes too. At around 750 BC, the Villanovan period would end, and the Etruscan property culture would form. At the same time, the Phoenicians and the Greeks had begun establishing colonies around the Mediterranean and started trading with the Etruscan, mainly because of the rich mineral resources of Etruria. During the next 50 years, trade was greatly expanded, with the Etruscans exporting goods to the Phoenicians, Greeks, and many northern peoples. Such a large scale of trade resulted in the gathering of great amounts of wealth in Etruria, which led to the rapid urbanization of the area. The Etruscan settlements that had been established during the Villanovan period were now reconstructed, as the inhabitants began to build strong fortification walls, stone-paved roads, water infrastructure, large houses, and temples. The settlements slowly transformed into independent city-states, which had control over the surrounding area. The largest of these city-states were Tarquinia, Veii, and Caesarea. Many of the cities had access to the sea through the rivers and controlled either large agricultural areas or a good number of rich minerals. This helped them become largely independent, although each city-state developed differently. Regarding the governmental system of the city-states, it seems that most of them were ruled by a king. But in the early years of the Etruscan history, an aristocratic class of powerful families and clans arose, the members of which would either hold important political position or influence those in power. Around the 5th century BC, oligarchy became the prevailing type of government. Around the 7th century BC, a loose alliance among the 12 greatest Etruscan cities was established. According to Roman historians, the 12 cities had an annual meeting in sanctuary of Fanum Valtumnae, near the city of Volsini, with 12 elected leaders representing their respective cities. The influence of the Eastern Mediterranean people on the Etruscan civilization was massive, lasting from around 700 to 550 BC. This era is known today as the Orientalizing period. During that time, the Etruscan alphabet was formed, and many Oriental-based artworks were made, which the wealthy Etruscan proudly displayed as symbols of power. The Etruscans adopted the Greek hoplite military system, as well as the Greek armor and weapons. Thus, the army of each city-state became more organized. Aside from powerful land force, some of the city-states also developed a large navy. All this change greatly enhanced the power of the Etruscan cities, and before long their influence was spreading both to the north and the south. The northern cities expanded their territories, creating new cities in the Po Valley and on the Adriatic Sea. Meanwhile, the southern cities, after failing to expand by force, established their dominance through political and cultural influence on the regions of Campania and Latium, including the city of Rome, where they established a line of kings. Yet after these grand expansions, many problems began to rise, and the Etruscans slowly entered a period of instability and decline. During the early 6th century BC, the increasing presence of the Greeks and Carthaginians in the western Mediterranean gave rise to tensions between the two, as they contested for both the control of the sea trade routes and the establishment of new colonies. The Etruscans were also involved in the conflict. In the 5th century BC, the Etruscans, aligned with the Carthaginians, led a number of attacks against the Greeks. Most of these were unsuccessful, though, and eventually the Greeks, led by the city-state of Syracuse, launched a series of raids in the Etruscan coastline, sacking and destroying most of the Etruscan ports. This was a serious blow to the power and economy of most Etruscan city-states, as most of the sea trade routes on the Tyrrhenian Sea were not accessible anymore. On top of that, the Etruscan influence in the regions of Latium and Campania largely diminished. By 509 BC, the Romans had ousted their last king and had declared the foundation of the Republic. As much destructive as that was for the Etruscans, the worst was yet to come. In the north, a new threat had appeared. In the 5th century BC, a great number of Gauls had crossed the Alps, settling around the Po Valley. During the late 5th and early 4th centuries BC, their tribes would lead a series of attacks on the Etruscan cities. Although the Etruscans managed to hold them off, their economy was greatly affected, as the trade routes to the north were disrupted. Meanwhile, in the south, the city of Rome was becoming more powerful by the day. In 406 BC, the Romans declared war on the Etruscan city of Veii, which at the time was very wealthy and powerful. After 10 years of brutal battles, Veii was sacked and destroyed. Rome's conquest of Etruria continued throughout the 4th and 3rd centuries BC. The Romans expanded their territory and brought all the Etruscan under their rule within a century, with the last Etruscan city falling in 264 BC. After the conquest, the Etruscans were assimilated by the Romans. The slow but steady Romanization of the people would eventually lead to the disappearance of the Etruscan culture, which by the time of the Roman Empire was but an echo of the past. In the following videos, I'll tell you more about these events. Subscribe to the channel so as not to miss them. At this point, I wish to conclude this video. If it was interesting, leave comments, put likes and repost. Thank you for your attention. See you later. Goodbye.